A woman boards the overnight train from Brussels to Paris, elegant, unassuming, carrying a leather handbag and a travel magazine. 3 rows ahead sits a businessman reviewing spreadsheets on his laptop. By the window, a retired teacher sketches the Belgian countryside as darkness falls. Just another evening departure. Except none of them are ordinary passengers. 12 hours later, the woman never arrives in Paris. Her seat is empty, her luggage abandoned, her passport discovered in a station locker with a single handwritten note. The package is safe. No arrest, no confrontation, no headlines. Authorities report a voluntary departure from the train at an unscheduled stop. But intelligence files tell a different story about a woman carrying blueprints that could have armed a rogue state with nuclear capability, and the invisible operation that intercepted her before she could complete her delivery. This was interdiction perfected. Silent, surgical, executed without a single witness realizing what had unfolded around them. The conductor remembered nothing unusual about the overnight service to Paris. Passengers boarded routinely, settled into their compartments, and prepared for the journey through the dark Belgian countryside into France. Yet within hours, encrypted communications were bouncing between CIA headquarters in Langley, MI6 stations in London, and French intelligence offices in Paris about a woman who had vanished exactly the way Western intelligence agencies were trained to make high-value targets disappear without diplomatic incidents. Nadia Kozlov wasn't her real name. The Ukrainian passport was one of 19 false identities accumulated over 6 years of operating in the shadows between Moscow, Tehran, and European capitals. To her handlers in Russian intelligence, she was Nightingale, the phantom courier who had successfully transported classified materials across a dozen borders without detection. To the CIA, she was Code Red Priority, a target whose interdiction had been authorized at the highest levels of the American national security apparatus. And to the passengers sharing Car 7 with her that evening, she was simply another elegant traveler reading a magazine and sipping mineral water. What none of them knew was that 3 rows ahead sat a businessman who wasn't really analyzing quarterly reports. That the teacher sketching by the window wasn't an amateur artist. That concealed in the luggage rack above Nadia's seat was a modified scanning device smaller than a smartphone, monitoring electromagnetic signatures from her handbag with technology that could detect shielded electronics through leather and fabric. The machinery of interdiction had been set in motion weeks earlier. And by the time the train departed Brussels platform, Nadia's capture was already a mathematical certainty. This is the story of how intelligence services transform interception into art. How bureaucracy becomes the architecture of prevention, and how a courier can be stopped in plain sight while leaving investigators with nothing but procedural records. It's about the invisible war being fought across European railways by operatives whose greatest weapon isn't force, but the ability to make interventions look like routine security procedures. And it reveals something more disturbing than any single arrest. The existence of a global surveillance system where certain people can be tracked, intercepted, and neutralized with surgical precision, leaving behind only the illusion that nothing extraordinary occurred. Understanding how Nadia was stopped requires understanding who she was and why her interdiction was deemed essential by intelligence agencies thousands of miles away. Born in 1982 in Donetsk, eastern Ukraine, she grew up in the industrial heartland where Soviet factories still dominated the skyline and Russian remained the dominant language despite Ukrainian independence. Her father worked as an engineer at a metallurgical plant. Her mother taught physics at the local Polytechnic Institute. From childhood, Nadia understood the language of systems and structures, watching her parents navigate the post-Soviet chaos where old loyalties competed with new realities. Every power shift etched itself into her consciousness like a lesson she would later exploit. Eastern Ukraine in the 1990s was a landscape of transition and opportunity. The collapse of Soviet authority created vacuums that ambitious individuals learned to exploit. Nadia's family survived like everyone else, adapting to the new economy while maintaining connections to the old system. She learned young that survival required flexibility. You adapted to whoever held power. You maintained multiple identities depending on the audience. You became whatever was necessary to achieve your objectives. These instincts would later define her operational methodology. School records described her as exceptionally intelligent but emotionally distant. While other students formed social bonds, Nadia remained calculating and observant. She excelled in languages and computer science, teaching herself English and German by downloading pirated software and reading technical manuals. By her late teens, she was already earning money as a translator for businessmen navigating cross-border trade, carrying documents between Donetsk and Moscow while border guards waved her through without suspecting the quiet young woman. The 2004 Orange Revolution transformed Ukraine into a battleground between Western and Russian influence. She watched from university dormitories as students protested in Kiev, demanding alignment with Europe while others defended ties to Moscow. But Nadia saw something others missed. Loyalty wasn't about ideology but leverage. Information without strategy was just noise. This realization shaped everything that followed, transforming her from another ambitious student into something far more valuable. A courier who understood that discretion and calculation could accomplish what passion never could. What distinguished Nadia from other operatives wasn't commitment to any cause, but her methodology. She wasn't driven by patriotism or belief, but by cold pragmatism. She viewed espionage as a transaction of risk and reward, not emotion. Associates described her as meticulous, never impulsive, never memorable. Her presence left no lasting impression. She kept encrypted files organized by mathematical sequences that only she understood. She recorded every border crossing, every contact, every potential security exposure. Her obsession with documentation bordered on compulsion. She preferred standardized routes, even-numbered trains, identical hotel chains. To her, predictability meant control in an unpredictable profession. She rarely laughed, but when she did, it served a specific purpose: to blend, to deflect, to reassure. She avoided relationships and commitments, choosing solitude over the vulnerabilities of human connection. A former colleague later recalled her saying something that captured her entire worldview: people who form attachments create weaknesses. People who remain alone remain untouchable. That isolation became her greatest asset, the operational distance that allowed her to move through hostile territories for years without emotional compromise. Russian intelligence first recruited her during her university years, identifying her potential through academic monitoring programs targeting students with technical skills and cross-border experience. They approached her with a simple proposition: use her language abilities and unremarkable appearance to transport documents between operatives who couldn't risk direct contact. The initial assignments were minor tests, carrying encrypted USB drives between Moscow and Kiev. But Nadia proved exceptional. She never panicked, never deviated from protocols, never attracted attention. Within 2 years, she had become invaluable, the courier who could move sensitive materials across borders while maintaining the appearance of an ordinary traveler. By the late 2000s, she had evolved beyond simple document transport. Her handlers recognized that traditional espionage methods had become compromised by digital surveillance. What intelligence operations needed was human couriers who could physically transport materials that couldn't be risked through electronic channels. Nadia became the architect of her own methodology, designing compartmentalized systems where she never knew the full context of what she carried, ensuring that if intercepted, she couldn't compromise the broader operation. She relocated frequently, maintaining apartments in Prague, Vienna, and Brussels under different identities. Each residence was chosen for its proximity to major rail hubs and international borders. She avoided air travel, recognizing that trains offered superior operational security. Less screening, more exit options, easier to blend into diverse passenger populations. From these bases, Nadia coordinated transport operations that moved everything from encrypted hard drives to biological samples across European borders. Western intelligence agencies first flagged her in 2011 when facial recognition software matched her image across multiple border crossings using different passports. The pattern suggested professional courier activity, but without evidence of illegal transport, authorities could only monitor and catalog her movements. She appeared in databases under 7 different names, each supported by meticulously forged documents that had cost thousands to produce. CIA analysts labeled her a facilitator, bureaucratic terminology that understated her significance while acknowledging her danger. Her methods were invisible rather than dramatic. When she transported classified materials, they were concealed in modified electronics that appeared as consumer products. When she crossed borders, her documentation was flawless enough to withstand scrutiny. She treated geography as a puzzle, calculating optimal routes through countries with minimal security cooperation. In 2013, intercepted communications suggested her involvement in transporting technical specifications stolen from a French aerospace contractor. Though she never appeared in direct messages, surveillance footage showed her meeting briefly with a suspected Russian handler in a Vienna cafe. For the CIA, this confirmed that Nadia wasn't just a passive courier, but an active participant in sophisticated espionage operations targeting Western technology. Between 2013 and 2016, Intelligence reports linked her to at least 15 cross-border transports of classified materials. She moved through European capitals with practiced ease, changing identities and routes to evade pattern recognition. Each operation demonstrated her systematic approach, treating risk as a mathematical variable to be minimized through preparation and discipline. She once told a contact something that revealed her philosophy: the moment you believe you're safe is the moment you've already been caught. Paranoia wasn't a weakness, it was survival. These successful operations drew increasing attention from Western counterintelligence. But stopping her required more than surveillance. It required catching her with concrete evidence while maintaining diplomatic discretion that wouldn't expose the methods used to track her. In early 2017, Signals Intelligence intercepted coded communications between Russian handlers discussing Nightingale and an upcoming high-priority transport through Western Europe. The specifics were vague, but the urgency was clear. Something significant was being moved, and Nadia Kozlov was the chosen courier. CIA analysts spent weeks decrypting fragments of communication, piecing together clues about the operation's nature. References to technical specifications and Tehran suggested the transport involved materials related to Iran's nuclear program. The timeline indicated the operation would occur within a 2-month window, but the exact date, route, and package remained uncertain. Then, in March 2017, a breakthrough came through a source inside Russian intelligence who provided partial details about the operation. Nadia would be transporting blueprints for advanced centrifuge components, technical drawings that could accelerate Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities by years. The documents were too sensitive to risk digital transmission, requiring physical transport by a trusted courier. The route would run from Brussels to Paris, using overnight rail to avoid airport security. The delivery was scheduled for late March. For the CIA, this information transformed the situation from monitoring to crisis intervention. If Nadia successfully delivered those blueprints to her contacts in Paris, they would likely reach Tehran within days. The diplomatic and security implications were severe enough to authorize immediate interdiction, regardless of the operational risks involved. The authorization came through classified channels with a designation known only by its code phrase, Operation Quiet Interception. What Nadia didn't know as she prepared for her Brussels departure was that every aspect of her journey had already been mapped, analyzed, and compromised by intelligence agencies coordinating her capture. CIA surveillance teams had been tracking her for weeks, monitoring her movements through Brussels while she established her cover story as a cultural consultant attending conferences. Analysts at Langley studied every detail of her routine, looking for the vulnerable moment when operational conditions would align for interdiction without diplomatic incident. They needed a location where intervention could be staged as routine security procedure, where agents could execute the operation without alerting other passengers, and where evidence could be secured without revealing the intelligence methods used to track her. The overnight train from Brussels to Paris offered nearly perfect conditions. The journey's duration provided multiple intervention points. The international nature of the route allowed coordination between Belgian, French, and American agencies. And the contained environment of a moving train limited Nadia's escape options while maintaining the appearance of normal security protocols. The CIA's Special Activities Division began operational planning immediately, coordinating with Belgian State Security and French DGSE to ensure seamless execution. The operation required precise choreography, agents positioned throughout the train, technical specialists monitoring her electronically, and backup teams ready at multiple stations in case the primary intervention failed. 4 American operatives were selected for the mission, supported by 6 European counterparts. Their cover identities were built from legitimate backgrounds, each able to withstand casual questioning. They would board the train separately, establish positions around the target, and coordinate the interdiction through encrypted communications disguised as passenger smartphone activity. The psychological profile of chosen operatives emphasized specific capabilities: ability to maintain cover in close proximity to the target, comfort operating in foreign jurisdictions, and capacity for improvisation if circumstances deviated from the operational plan. On March 28, 2017, the team began positioning in Brussels. 2 operatives arrived at Gare du Midi 3 hours before departure, establishing observation points in the station's cafe and bookshop. They monitored arriving passengers, confirming Nadia's arrival at 7:45 p.m. She moved with characteristic efficiency, purchasing a first-class ticket to Paris and a bottle of mineral water before proceeding to the platform. Her behavior showed no signs of counter-surveillance awareness. She appeared relaxed, confident, completely unaware of the invisible net tightening around her. The overnight Thalys service departed Brussels at 8:52 p.m. Nadia occupied a window seat in car 7, placing her leather handbag carefully on the seat beside her and arranging a travel magazine on the fold-down table. Her movements were practiced, economical, revealing nothing unusual. 2 CIA operatives sat in the same carriage, positioned to maintain visual contact without obvious surveillance. A Belgian intelligence officer occupied the adjacent car, ready to coordinate with train security if intervention became necessary. French agents waited at intermediate stops, prepared to board if the operation extended beyond the initial plan. The technical surveillance device concealed in the luggage rack above Nadia's seat represented years of miniaturization engineering. No larger than a smartphone, it emitted targeted electromagnetic pulses that could penetrate shielding and detect electronic components inside her handbag. Within minutes of departure, the device confirmed the presence of unusual electronics. A modified tablet computer with custom encryption hardware and multiple storage devices showing signatures consistent with data containing technical specifications. This confirmation triggered the operation's next phase. At 10:15 p.m., as the train crossed into French territory, a CIA officer posing as a railway security inspector entered car 7. He moved methodically through the carriage, checking passenger documents with practiced efficiency that aroused no suspicion. When he reached Nadia's seat, he requested her passport with polite formality. She complied calmly, handing over her Ukrainian documents while maintaining composed eye contact. The inspector examined the passport with deliberate slowness, comparing the photo to her face while discreetly photographing the document with a camera embedded in his identification badge. He thanked her and moved on, leaving Nadia apparently unconcerned. But the photographed passport was already being transmitted to Langley for analysis. Within minutes, facial recognition algorithms confirmed what analysts suspected. The passport was forged, part of a sophisticated document set created by Russian intelligence for their operatives. The woman traveling as Nadia Kozlov, cultural consultant, was actually Natalia Sokolov, a known courier associated with multiple classified material transports. At 10:47 p.m., the train made an unscheduled stop at a small station outside Lille. A railway announcement explained a routine technical inspection required all passengers to remain seated. What passengers didn't know was that this stop had been coordinated hours earlier between intelligence agencies and French railway authorities. 4 additional operatives boarded, including a French DGSE officer with legal authority to conduct security searches on French soil. At 11:03 p.m., the same inspector returned to car 7, accompanied by the French officer and a uniformed railway security guard. They approached Nadia's seat with calm professionalism, the inspector explaining in fluent French and English that random security screenings were being conducted following intelligence about potential smuggling activity. Nadia's composure faltered for the first time. Her eyes moved rapidly, calculating options, measuring distances to exits. But she was surrounded, boxed in by the train's architecture and the careful positioning of operatives throughout the carriage. She had nowhere to run, no plausible way to resist without confirming guilt. The French officer requested permission to inspect her handbag. She hesitated for 3 seconds, a lifetime in operational terms, before complying with a slight nod. Her hands remained steady as she handed over the leather bag, but her jaw tightened perceptibly. Inside the handbag, beneath a layer of cosmetics and travel documents, the officers discovered the modified tablet computer. When activated, it displayed innocuous travel applications. But forensic examination would later reveal hidden partitions containing detailed technical blueprints for advanced centrifuge components, exactly the materials that intelligence agencies had feared she was transporting. Nadia was asked to accompany the officers to the train's security compartment for additional questioning. She complied without protest, gathering her belongings with mechanical precision while other passengers watched with mild curiosity before returning to their phones and books. To them, this appeared as routine security theater, forgettable and unremarkable. In the security compartment, French and American officers explained her situation with bureaucratic clarity. The materials in her possession constituted violations of multiple international treaties regarding nuclear proliferation. She faced prosecution in France, extradition requests from the United States, and diplomatic complications that would take months to resolve. Or she could cooperate. Nadia understood leverage when she encountered it. After 30 minutes of silence, she began negotiating. She would provide information about her handlers, her previous transports, and the network facilitating these operations. In exchange, she wanted immunity from prosecution and protection from Russian retaliation. The terms were recorded and transmitted to Washington for authorization. By 1:30 a.m. as the train approached Paris, preliminary approval had been granted for a cooperation agreement. Nadia would be taken into protective custody by French intelligence, debriefed by American officers, and eventually relocated under a new identity after providing testimony against the broader espionage network. When the train arrived at Gare du Nord at 2:07 a.m., most passengers disembarked normally, unaware that one of their fellow travelers had been quietly removed hours earlier. Nadia's luggage was left in her seat with a note indicating she had departed voluntarily at an intermediate stop, a procedural fiction that satisfied railway regulations. The blueprints she had been carrying were secured by French intelligence and immediately shared with American and Israeli counterparts for analysis. The technical specifications confirmed intelligence assessments. The documents would have significantly accelerated Iran's nuclear development timeline if successfully delivered. Within 72 hours, all operatives involved in the interdiction had left France using their normal identities. The operation was archived in CIA files with the notation, "Objective achieved without diplomatic incident." French authorities recorded the event as a routine customs enforcement action. Belgian intelligence updated Nadia's files with her true identity and cooperation status. And in Tehran, intelligence officers waited for blueprints that would never arrive, eventually concluding that their courier had been compromised. Operation Quiet Interception demonstrated techniques refined over decades of counterintelligence work. The surveillance technology used to track Nadia represented cutting-edge signals intelligence, combining satellite monitoring, facial recognition, and electronic signature detection into a comprehensive tracking system. The electromagnetic scanner concealed above her seat was designed specifically for train operations, using the metal framework of the carriage to focus pulses without detection. Communication between agents occurred through modified smartphones running custom applications that appeared as normal social media but transmitted encrypted tactical data through frequency-hopping protocols that evaded interception. Each message was compressed into millisecond bursts, imperceptible to casual observation. The coordination with European intelligence services demonstrated the NATO alliance's intelligence sharing architecture at its most sophisticated. Information flowed through secure channels connecting Langley, Brussels, Paris, and London, with each agency contributing specific capabilities while maintaining operational compartmentalization. The legal framework allowing the interdiction was carefully constructed to avoid diplomatic complications. French authorities executed the actual detention, exercising sovereign jurisdiction on French territory. American officers acted in advisory capacity, providing intelligence support without direct enforcement action that might trigger international incidents. The operation came within seconds of compromise multiple times. At Brussels Station, Nadia had briefly paused near a waste bin, and operatives feared she might have detected surveillance and planned to dispose of the materials. She moved on after checking her phone, apparently satisfied with whatever message she had received. On the train, a suspicious passenger questioned the unscheduled stop, demanding explanations from the conductor. A Belgian officer intervened smoothly, explaining fabricated technical issues with practiced authority until the passenger accepted the explanation and returned to his seat. Every moment carried the weight of potential failure, but preparation and improvisation carried the operation forward successfully. The interrogation revealed the extent of Nadia's activities over 6 years. She had transported classified materials across European borders at least 23 times, including technical specifications from aerospace contractors, pharmaceutical research from biotech firms, and now nuclear centrifuge designs. Her debriefing provided intelligence agencies with unprecedented insight into Russian courier networks operating throughout Europe. She identified handlers, safe houses, and communication protocols that led to the disruption of multiple ongoing espionage operations. Her cooperation triggered a cascade of arrests and diplomatic expulsions across 6 countries over the following 18 months. Within weeks of her interdiction, Russian intelligence had concluded that Nightingale had been compromised. They initiated damage control protocols, burning communication channels and relocating operatives who might have been exposed through her knowledge. The blueprints she failed to deliver were presumed compromised, forcing Russian handlers to develop alternative methods for supporting Tehran's nuclear program. The international reaction was carefully managed to avoid escalation. France announced the arrest of a foreign national for customs violations without specifying the nature of the materials involved. Russia filed routine diplomatic protests about harassment of their citizens abroad, knowing their objections would be ignored but maintaining the appearance of concern. The United States issued no public statement, allowing the operation to remain classified while circulating internal assessments to Allied intelligence services. The captured blueprints were analyzed by weapons specialists at Los Alamos and shared with International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors. The technical specifications confirmed that Iran had been developing more advanced centrifuge designs than previously known, suggesting their nuclear program was more sophisticated than public estimates indicated. This intelligence justified additional diplomatic pressure and sanctions targeting Iran's enrichment capabilities. Nadia Kozlov disappeared into the witness protection infrastructure maintained jointly by American and European intelligence services. She was relocated to an undisclosed location with a new identity, her past erased from official records. Former contacts received disinformation suggesting she had died in an accident, allowing her to remain hidden from Russian retaliation. The train between Brussels and Paris still runs nightly. Passengers occupy the same seats where Nadia sat that March evening. Business travelers work on laptops, tourists doze against windows, security inspectors conduct routine checks. Nothing marks the location where a nuclear courier was intercepted, because that's how successful operations look. Ordinary, unremarkable, leaving no trace that anything extraordinary ever occurred. What does this reveal about the world we inhabit? That certain people can be tracked and intercepted anywhere by intelligence agencies possessing the resources and coordination to reach across borders. That sovereignty functions only until more powerful interests decide otherwise. That the invisible machinery of surveillance operates continuously, identifying threats and neutralizing them before they materialize into crises. The truth emerging from Operation Quiet Interception is both reassuring and disturbing. Reassuring because it demonstrates that intelligence agencies can prevent catastrophic transfers of dangerous technology. Disturbing because it reveals the extent of surveillance systems tracking individuals across continents without their knowledge or consent. Drop your thoughts in the comments about the balance between security and privacy in counterintelligence operations. If this investigation into invisible interdiction made you see international security differently, hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe because we're exposing the operations that governments conduct in silence and the machinery of power that operates without public accountability. Hit the notification bell. The next covert operation is already unfolding somewhere on another train, another border, another invisible battlefield.